Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. If you can't be quiet and let the meeting take place, you'll be asked to leave. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting and this is the West End Opportunity Partnership meeting. It's starting at approximately 4:30. We have some members that are joining us hybridly, and I'll ask Rita, could you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. We have the list. Yeah. J. Michael Brown. Alicia Burns. Gina Dunlap. Present. Jennifer Hancock.
Here remotely.
Tammy Hawker. Yes. Devon Holt. David James.
Here.
Dr. Gabe Jones.
Here.
David Kaplan.
Here.
Dr. Mary Milliner. Here. Michael Neagle.
Here.
Christopher Romaine.
Present.
Desmond Smith Jr. Dr. Frank Smith. Steve Traeger.
Here.
Dr. Don Wade. Here. Mark Watkins.
Here.
Gary Williams.
Present.
I always want to add your middle name. Jeff O'Brien. And Jeff Taylor. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of minutes. Everybody received their minutes by email.
It should come out of the speaker mount.
Or I think
It should be loud.
But it isn't letters. All right, at this point, I'll take a motion to approve. Motion by King Dunlap. A second, second by Mark Watkins. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. The minutes are approved as written. Next, we have a special presentation from the Greater Louisville Association of Realtors. And who is going to be the presenter here? All right. You get all the black people in the shop. Yeah. Let's get it nothing. Wow. You just have a lot of this. 1, 2, 3. Stop no more. If I say I need one go. Don't put me, I don't give a fuck. I'm texting y'all seen anyway. Yeah, I'm staying in here. I mean, that would come to my heart. That's how this weekend, boy. With that pretty funny bed that you get, and then they got a talking nigga. Yeah, I'm mad at her. Fuck all this shit. Cause we shutting all you motherfuckers down. Yeah, I'm in here. I don't know what he thinks. Wow, they don't trap it. I mean, no.
For some reason, it just wasn't on TV anymore. Don't know why. They can still hear us and everything on here though. Yeah. I'll bring it back up.
Did it just go off?
No, it should pop back up. It'll pop back up in the full. Attention, no, please check your plug or signal.
Let me tell them, hold on.
Thank you very, very much.
It went out.
They can still see her. They can still see it. I mean.
Mhm. Mhm.
Very much. So that was a presentation to the West End Partnership to go into our account from the Greater Louisville Association of Realtors, the grant to the partnership. And so I just really want to say thank you to GLAR for their contribution. Next on the agenda, we have Board of Education. So there's going to be an educational piece. I think I see Pamela Stevenson and Gerald Neal there. So Pamela Stevenson, Representative Stevenson, and Senator Neal helped write the legislation that created the West End Opportunity Partnership. And so now that we have our new members on board, we want to have an opportunity for you to hear and understand about the writing of the legislation and some key parts of the legislation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Senator Neal.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, but you can't see me. Is that?
No, he doesn't have his camera.
Yeah, you turn your camera on, Senator?
No, it says that you won't allow me to.
Oh, okay.
You
Says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Let's
Yeah.
make him a co-host. Just make him, and then make him a co-host and see what happens.
Alvarito.
See.
Okay. Yeah. Because you could hear him pretty good. Senator Neal,
There I am.
there you go.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
First of all, thank you very much for this invitation to myself and Representative Stevenson, who also is online here. I'm calling from Frankfurt. I just came out of a committee meeting, and the wonders of technology enable us to connect anyway. So I'm glad to be here. First of all, I want to thank all of you all for the work that you have been undertaking. This is no small task. Keeping in mind that you're starting from scratch, you're starting a new idea, you're starting in an environment that you have to rearrange your own thinking, your relationships, and so forth, and then adapt all of that to the prescription that was outlined broadly in the legislation itself. So this is not easy. We knew it would not be easy. We knew it would take time, but yet here we are today. And I want to congratulate you on the work that you've done and how far you've gotten with that. Having said that, I'm going to go very directly into this piece. And I don't know if Q&A is part of the presentation, but I'm going to start, and then I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Representative Stevenson. This started, and don't get me into dates now because I'm gonna lose it. COVID got me sort of disoriented on that front. But this started really as an extension of what had happened in the protests with respect to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And the reason why I raised that is because during those protests, a lot of people began to rethink what their perspectives were, particularly as related to the African-American community. And that also opened the door or an opportunity to revisit these issues in the legislature itself. So myself, Representative Stevenson on her side of the aisle, as well as others, began to talk. In this particular situation, the discussion started with the President of the Senate, Robert Stivers. It included representatives of One West. Yvonne Smith was very much involved in that. It also involved representatives from the Federal Reserve Bank, Nikki Jackson. I hope I got that right. And also myself, as well as Morgan McGarvey, and there were others that played roles in this, in and out of this particular piece, and there was support staff as well. So, but the way it really started was we began to sit down and start this discussion I talked about, and we explored different options over a period of time. You know, part of it was a fact-finding thing. The president of the Senate was invited to Louisville. In fact, he may have requested, I don't know, I wasn't in that initial one, but came down and was sort of like a fact-finding. And then we all began to discuss these issues. And this went for a long time. We were trying to find out what was a perspective. So we began to look outside of Louisville, because we soon settled on the obvious, and that is the condition of the neighborhood, the representation at various levels in the neighborhood, and exactly what could be done that was meaningful or could be sustained over a period of time. And the conversation went in that direction for a long, it was months. In fact, the whole thing that I'm getting ready to tell you about took at least 9 months. And I can't think of any piece of legislation that I engaged in with this much conversation with so many people at so many intervals along the way. But ultimately, what we began to gravitate toward were the issues of housing, the issues of economic development, community empowerment, and that was pretty much the discussion. I won't get into all the X and O's on this thing because it wasn't an easy discussion. It was an amicable discussion, but it wasn't an easy discussion because we recognized it was difficult. We talked about years of history that brought us to the moment that we were there in the first place. But ultimately, what we came up with was an idea that, wait a minute, first of all, we had to have funds. There's no question about that. Secondly, we had to have a means for sustained funding if we're going to do anything meaningful. Thirdly, we had to have significant community involvement and direction in this particular piece. We recognize that this is not something where you have a great idea and it's just going to happen. It's going to have to take certain levels of expertise to pull off various aspects of it. So we set that kind of stage. Then we began to talk about governance processes, and our approach to that was, let's take our fingers off of this. In fact, we took a position that the state hands would not be on this once this came together, and also that city government's hands would not be on this, that this would be a self-sustaining board once it began to operate and put together its bylaws within the broad prescription that we had outlaid. So this is very important. That's why I'm emphasizing this, is that, you know, we didn't want, at least from the standpoint of the community-oriented individuals, myself and ultimately Representative Stevenson, we didn't want control from Franklin. The other thing was we wanted to make sure that this went deep, that we weren't thinking just along the terms of the usual thinking patterns that people have because of their experience. People who've had backgrounds like myself, for instance, and others that have backgrounds, but how do we get this thing down to the block level? Because there are a lot of very meaningful voices in the community, have done work over the centuries over the years, and make tremendous contributions and still make tremendous contributions. So we didn't want to run into that. We didn't want to disrupt anything that was happening. We didn't want to replace or supplant anything was there. But the question was, how do we engage? And when I say we, we're talking about the community. So that's how we came up with the thought. And I got to tell you, it was a long and engaged discussion of how do you form a governing entity that is representative for the community, yet had the expertise to carry out this matter. Because after all, we weren't talking about $1,000, $10,000, or $100,000. We was talking about millions of dollars over extended periods of time. That's how we came up with the idea of the institutional involvement. And then the question was, how does the community, when I say the community, representatives of the community, people of that community could significantly drive this process? So a few things came to mind in that situation. One was we began to look at institutions that have demonstrated over a significant period of times not only their mission, but their engagement, their involvement, their efforts in the community, organizations that demonstrated by their engagement, their credibility in the community. And then we developed a structure that identified of the 9 neighborhoods within the area that we identified, representatives from each of those areas. And they would ultimately become the governing board as you are seated now. In addition to that, we fought hard for an advisory board. You know, some people have a tendency to think advisory boards are less important in certain situations, but what we did, we built the advisory board into the structure so that it didn't also become an aside, it became actually an integral part of it. But we kept enough distance in terms of its engagement with the structure so that it could do the honest work, the uncompromised work of expression from the community. Because keep in mind, we're looking at the block level, the voices that we had not heard before, the voices that those ladies and men who protect 1 or 2 houses on a block, for instance. You know, they sweep it up every day. They're the ones that provide leadership in those blocks with respect to that, regardless of what was happening around them. They were committed to the turf that they lived on. So we wanted to get down to that level. The other thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we built in a training capacity. We knew that we didn't have the expertise ourselves, that it would take a process by those who do have expertise to deal with a number of things. And part of that is dealing with community and economic development, finance, equity, community engagement, gentrification. Some people would ask when we started, well, why gentrification? Well, to us, those who represent the community, it was obvious why. But the question was, we knew that if you're going to go into take an idea or something new into an area, you can't do that because you decide you just want to do this. You have to understand where you're operating and the dynamics and the forces that are operating out here. So that we specifically pulled that piece out to deal with that. So that is how it came together, and it evolved over a period of time. It had the major components such as the governing board and the advisory board. It created a open meetings format, making sure that we had the ability for people to know what was going on, to make sure that it was something that wasn't done behind closed doors with respect to that. We built in expertise by virtue of the institutional involvement. And one of the arguments that Representative Stevenson and myself were making all the time is that we pushed back on this idea that, you know, there's West Louisville and we had to go in there and save West Louisville. We had to go somewhere else to get all the expertise. When we were telling them, look, we have next door neighbors with this expertise. There's expertise all across this community, all kinds of ways. What is needed here is opportunity and the leverage to do that. So the idea is, and what Representative Stevenson and myself committed ourselves to, is stepping back. We slowly stepped back because there was a hiatus between when the idea was put into place and to get to a point critically where it could perpetuate itself, but not putting our hands on this, that it was not something for us to determine what was going to happen. I just want to make a couple other points. I'm going to turn it over to Representative Stevenson. From my perspective, I dare say our perspective, there's some things that should be noted. I think you may have already noted it yourself at some point. This is not just new. This is something that people from across the country, quite frankly, are taking a look at to see how this rolls out. Because what they're seeing here is not only an entity that has to reflect the racial makeup of the governing board with respect to that. They also are seeing that now here's an entity that would have $30+ million to begin with. It had some girth. Now you'd have an entity that would have to collaborate and make a relationship with city government, which is the biggest player in this field, not to mention the other players that are already in the field. And we thought that this was going to be very important for Louisville, and particularly for West Louisville. And then lastly, when we looked at this particular piece, we realized too that that we also have professional roles and representative roles and all kinds of roles in the community, being of the community ourselves. And we want to make sure that from that standpoint that we didn't compromise our original roles with respect to that, and that we gave respect to those who assumed this awesome responsibility. And we're happy to see you doing just that. I will point out that some people have a tendency to think, oh, here they come, here, you know, the horses have come, the cavalry's arrived, all great things are going to happen. No, this is not a panacea. We recognize this, but we do know that there's a potential for this entity, you, becoming significant players in the mix of things and the collaborations and the relationships that have to be formed, molded, revisited, restructured, even new structures in order to accomplish the things that I think we all want to happen. And that is an uplifted and a strong and vibrant community. So with that being said, Representative Stevenson, if you will.
Thank you. One of the things that we were very, very interested in was making sure that the community was informed and the community had input and the community knew that their position was valued. So when the legislation was approved, we started having community outreach meetings on Zoom from May through December of 2021. We did it.
If you can't, I will have to leave.
We did it from Thursday evenings and Saturday mornings so that we could have two available times for people that work different types of shifts. And what we discovered is when we first started having the meetings in May, people had the normal type questions. What is this? What are you talking about? How will it impact me? And by the time we got through the summer community outreach, the question shifted to how can I be a part of what's needed and will this work? Is it going to do everything we needed to do? And we were able to answer those questions. No, it's a beginning. It's a beginning because the number three things that people asked us for consistently when we were doing the talking to the people in the community was, one, people always come into West Louisville and tell us what to do. We want to tell us what to do. We want to be on the board and we want to direct ourselves, our community. And then number two, with every great idea, it rarely comes with money. So we need seed money. And those are the two things this legislation afforded us the opportunity to provide the community so that the things that we felt were important, you could begin to program and do the things that the community has said many times that they wanted. And when the session started, we completed those Thursday evenings and Saturday morning community outreach. And there were a number of, I think it's pretty, almost every session, we had anywhere from 10 community members all the way up to 31, 35 community members, depending on what was going on in the city. So with that, Senator Neal.
All right.
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, President James.
Thank you to both of you. I would ask any board members that have any questions, please feel free to ask Representative Stevens or Senator Neal any questions you have about the legislation.
Yes. Any board members?
No, you can just speak from there. Okay.
So I have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Identify yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Gabe Jones, and I'm on the board from the Russell neighborhood. So my first question is, obviously this could be great, but this could also have a lot of negative consequences. So in any legislation has negotiations. So what do you all view as potential pitfalls or potential things to guard against from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, I think it's in your hands. I think that's what this is about. You're creating. You know the community. there are other people around that table that know the community. I can sit in a room and give you my ideas all day long, and they may or may not hit the point. But the idea is, just like anything else, if you engage each other and you think in terms of building as opposed to tearing down, some people bring a lot of negativity to the table. One of the things that we're pushing is bringing positive attitudes to the table and finding solutions, not talking about what you're against. So when you ask about what are the pitfalls, there are plenty of pitfalls. Look at the condition of the community as it stands now. Look at the things that are dynamic, the dynamics that are taking place right now. Someone asked me a question, well, will this stop gentrification? I made a comment one time. I said, you know, the dynamics of gentrification are in full swing right now. From my perspective, there are people calling my house and houses down the street, offering big pieces of money, for instance, to buy people out, for instance. This is a first step that takes when property values go so low and the speculators start coming in. So the dynamics are there, and it's going to take a real strong, insightful, prepared, engaging, and inquiring board that listens very well to the community. But I will say this, it's not the pitfalls I'm concerned about. What I'm happy about is the opportunity. And I think if you look at it from that standpoint, I think that you're going to be extremely positive force.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with any further questions from board members for our Senator Neal, our Representative Stevens?
I thought you had two questions, Gary. He had two questions.
Here, huh?
Mhm.
So,
All your question?
now I have a couple.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I think some of them may just, so I'm assuming, so from your perspective, so in my neighborhood, it's like on my block, so you were talking specifically about like block to block, so specifically in the Russell neighborhood and on my block, I have folks who have been renters for 20 years in their same spot. And so I'm assuming, like, so when I'm in this space, my primary concern is how do I keep my neighbors there? And so when we're thinking about renter protection specifically, from your perspective, is that our responsibility to sort out, I'm assuming?
Well, unfortunately, the state years ago, and I can't even give you the full background about that because I think it preceded me. It's something we found out after the fact, actually, or as we was going through this process, took away the ability for Metro Council to do controls or do anything in this particular area that's meaningful. In other words, there were state laws on the book that prevented that. This entity can't do anything about that. This wasn't designed to do that, but there were other laws on the book that dealt with that. And if you look across the United States of America, you take New York, for instance, you might find one of the tools that they use is rent control. So they can control certain things depending upon the latitude that the legislation they have there gives them. Our Metro Council can't do that. And that is something that I will say that we have raised continually, particularly through this legislative session. In fact, made efforts to try to loosen that grip so that that could be done. But that's something that's still in play. Other than that, you can't really tell a private owner of property what to do with their property. They can set that property, at least to an extent. If they're going to rent it, or they're going to raise the rent, they're going to deal with the market or the circumstances or whatever they're trying to do. And that's why I think it's important that that has to be factored into your decision-making and the things you do. And keep in mind, there are already multiple players in the community. The same thing, many of the things that you would be focused on, at least if it's housing or if it's trying to help small businesses do to do what they're doing. Look, there are big players, including city government. That's what they do. So, you know, some folks that look at this effort and they get it out of whack because this is not the big gorilla coming in town. This is not near that. You're talking about city government, you're talking about multi-millions of dollars. If you're talking about some of these other entities, you're talking about years of involvement in improving housing, et cetera, et cetera. this is not the panacea. It's not going to stop all the mega forces, but it will be a player with other players to address these issues going forward. So what solutions there are, this is an opportunity to engage with others, to find them and to act upon them.
Yeah, and for my part, what I would say is that one of the biggest challenges that you could face is to focus on what can't be done instead of focusing on what you can do. Come up with a plan, focus on the challenges, and unite and march in that direction. This board has been given the authority to explore and look and see what's needed, develop a plan, and then go out and have that happen. So I would say we're in a good spot to look at the best practices around the country and to see what will fit this community. The other thing is that just this past session, I filed a bill that didn't go anywhere. Make no mistake, it went nowhere. Couldn't get out of committee to look at providing rental credit for people that rent apartments, just like a mortgage credit. But it didn't get anywhere because it wasn't necessarily what was on the agenda of the people that were in Frankfort. But it doesn't mean you can't file it. It doesn't mean we can't do the research. It doesn't mean we can't listen to what's needed and then present that. We just have to do the work, and we have to expend the energy doing it together and not fighting each other.
Oh, let me just add to this, because see, we didn't just do this and sit down. We're not done. We're going to be listening to you, and we've heard some of these questions that are raised, and we know some of the things we need to do, but we expect there'll be more information coming from your experience that you think is important that would channel into what we do as policymakers. Then it's our job to go to work on that. In fact, bring other people to the table from our community and perhaps across the state to deal with some mutual aspects of policy that not only affects Jefferson County or the west end of Louisville, but other places in the state. So we are willing and we are engaged in taking on that battle.
Thank you. Gabe, you have more questions?
Go ahead.
Identify yourself. When you're first
My
on.
name is Tammy Hawkins. I have a couple of questions.
Speak up a little louder, Tammy, please.
Okay.
One of the questions is, I noticed that you guys said that there were Zoom calls, and I have been following those Zoom calls that you guys were having for several months. Was there any other option outside of the Zoom call that the community was able to engage in?
Well, I can only speak from my standpoint. Not only do I function as a legislator, I function as an attorney. I function in national organizations. I do a whole lot. And I just have so much time. What we did was we put it out as wide as we could for folks to engage in us. We try to centralize it and was facilitated by the interim apparatus there at the Western Opportunity Partnership. We leveraged the LCCC. We asked them to come in and ask us to reach out because we knew that they had functional relationships throughout the community. So yeah, it was out there, and then we established a website, the interim website, and promoted it in those ways. And I might want to point out that when we went into this piece, it's not like I just showed up and Representative Stevenson just showed up. I was born and raised in this community, born in Beecher Terrace, lived in the West End almost all of my life. In fact, all of my life, except when I was way in school. So my point is that I know people across the community, and I engaged throughout this entire process, many individuals in their homes, on telephones, on Zoom, have my telephone number that calls me in my office. There was multiple interactions throughout this whole thing, and they continue, by the way.
And we also, I know I, in addition to Senator Neal, we attended a lot of meetings, a lot of in-person meetings, a lot of Zoom meetings about this topic to get the word spread. And we also send out a massive mailing for those who didn't have might not have access to Zoom or computer. We sent out a mailing with details and a newsletter. So we did within the infrastructure of what we have, we put information out there. And we also invited all the residents, every resident that we engaged with, help us, be engaged, bring somebody with you. Or if you can't bring them, tell us who they are so we can send them a letter and get them on the email list. This is a whole community effort. It's going to take each and every one of us to do whatever it is we can do.
On top of that, about 25,000 mailers directly to each home that could be identified by those mailing charts and all that stuff they have out there into every home, explaining this was there and how to connect with it. So we did all that we could and had the capacity to do, but you got to keep in mind, there's tens of thousands of people in that area. Not all of them are focused on that. Not all of them are, this is not the highest priority. People trying to live each and every day. That's what they do every day. This is just some people with some idea, the latest idea coming. So you just can't make people connect, but you can put it out there as best you can.
Right, I understand you can't let people connect, but I just think that if maybe it was more knowledgeable for the community, like, I see that the news is turned down, but were there any press releases to see how the community would feel? Or was there anything written as far as being proactive against gentrification? And was it anything written so it wouldn't happen?
Well, I think you need to ask some of the people that are there. They know a lot about what you're asking now, and I don't know all that they did. I can only tell you what we did in addition to that. See, normally what we do in Frankfort is that we pass a law and then we go and deal with another policy. We don't get down at this level like this all the time. This was different. We got it on this level as aggressively as we possibly could. Because of the nature of it. But it's new and it's complicated. In fact, I bet you in your meetings have found aspects of this very complicated, that you have to go through committees and you got to work these through. So when you start talking about the ideas that you want to share, you can only really do them in a general sense until it gets down to a board such as the one that's composed here. So they can get into the details and into the things that they need to get into. And you can't anticipate everything. So you don't know, things change. You get better information. So this is a process. And this, it's not something you snap your finger and everybody's gonna know. It's not something you can engage and all of a sudden you got success and or failure. It's gonna be a process. It's going to be taking effort. It's gonna take tenacity. It's gonna take a positive attitude toward building. Criticism ain't gonna get it. Negativity won't get it. But what can we build together? That's what we're trying to promote here. And we're here to assist in any way we can.
Any other board member? A question? No? All right. Well, Senator Neal and Representative Stevenson, I want to thank you for your time and dedication to this and your service to our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you and God bless you all.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so our next item is, I know that you've probably read the pages of the legislation and part of it talks about training the board. So that was part of it. The next part of it is housing needs and opportunities in West Louisville. And we have a presentation from the Metropolitan Housing Coalition and Anthony Curtis, the executive director. There you are.
Hiding down on this end. Thank you all for the invitation to present today. And I was given the challenge to give kind of a broad overview of housing needs, some opportunities that we have here with this TIP and some challenges as well. Rita's going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation here.
That good?
Go ahead and go to this
Oh, let me go for more for
for a second.
Okay.
Great.
Mhm.
start out with a reminder. I'm not going to go through the history of housing here. But that we must recognize that the maps we see today are a result of past injustices. This history has not disappeared. It is visualized in every map, every chart we see on housing, and in all the data we use on a daily basis to make new policy. And we cannot forget this history. So next slide is, I think there are a couple of things we need to focus on, and that's while the Weston Opportunity Partnership focuses on 9 neighborhoods, we sometimes forget to magnify that statement even further. The West End Opportunity Partnership focuses on 9 neighborhoods of neighbors, a community of people. We have to know the people and keep people central to this conversation. Specifically how people's lives are shaped by housing that is safe, that is stable, that is attainable and affordable. And that is my goal today, is to kind of give you the housing context of people affected by the partnership. We need to know the people, understand the housing need, and explore windows of opportunities for this. So I wanted to take a moment and go through some data from the State of Metropolitan Housing Report. This is from 2020-21. The new report comes out in June, so we'll have some updated information. But what you see visualized here are 3 maps, 1960 on the left, 2010 in the center, and 2020 on the right.
Can we make that full screen? So we can see.
That's all true.
Yeah. Full screen. It is online.
Nah, it's different on her screen. Can you click it over here?
It's on this one because it wouldn't let me do it because of this one being recorded. It's being recorded on this one. No, what I'm getting.
No, it's not.
Yeah, because this one is being, right. But it's from this screen over here.
Oh,
Uh-huh,
I was.
yeah, it's from this screen. Yeah. The brain takes mine. You see, it's from this screen. Uh-huh,
Can see it.
yeah, it's from this thing, from here. Mhm.
Right now, I think. Let's see if that works.
Yeah, but that's not, if not, it's from,
So
yeah.
it's not free. So allowing the share.
Yeah, this, because it's being recorded, it won't let us do it. That's why I had it set up over here. Yeah. Yeah. It's shared from this screen. It's being shared from this screen right here. That one was just for the main. Right here.
That's to use.
Go ahead, go ahead. That's why.
You need to get off here.
Right. Yeah. See, they find insurance. I'm trying to work out. And I don't want to.
You gotta give it. You have to give the restriction or permission over here
To who?
to this computer. No, just, no, don't. Just go to. Look at, hey, I mean, you should look close.
Well, I guess.
Yes.
Perfect on you. Right. Press the arrow on. There we go. There we go.
Great. So we need to advance several slides. So we 60, 2010, and 2020 representations, and you can see from 1960 to 2020, we have very similar maps up here on the board. Next slide. We're looking at female-headed households with children under 18 from 2010 to 2020. You can see concentrations yet again. The density is West Louisville and kind of southeast of the airport.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm monitoring the online version and I'm not seeing the presentation for everyone that's online.
Okay.
Just for reading, know that. I don't know if it's gonna record. Okay, so I don't know what happened. I had it set up differently, so apparently something happened. Yeah, and I'll send it. Yeah.
Sorry, it's still-
Yeah.
We have female-headed households. Go ahead to the next slide, please. We'll run through a lot of data here. Also concentrations of poverty from 2010 and then 2020 again. You see west, southwest Louisville and east of the airport. Next slide. Percent of the population with a disability. Yet again, east, west Louisville, southwest Louisville. Next slide. Public housing. Every map, you can kind of see a trend developing here where subsidized public housing has been built. Next slide. Affordable housing vouchers. Concentrations, and again in West Louisville, kind of southwest and east of the airport. Next. We talk about utilities impact affordable housing issues. You see where customers eligible for disconnections in 2019 and 2020. Again, west and southwest Louisville. Next slide. I pulled one eviction slide. There are many different eviction maps we can look at. We can see post-moratorium in 2020, where eviction activity was occurring, filings and as well as judgments. West Louisville and kind of southwest Louisville as well. Then the next slide, you can see impacts. All this impacts housing. Where people live matters. Zip codes matter. This is a slide from the Health Equity Report from a couple of years ago, showing a 13-year disparity between those who live in West Louisville and those who live in East Louisville. So where you live matters, has an impact on health, has an impact on a lot of different things. Next slide. Thought I'd put homeowners versus renters in here. 70% of white households own their homes in Louisville, while 36% of Black households own homes in Louisville. We've reproduced this chart every year. You can see kind of the disparities here. You can also go down to female-headed households at the bottom and show ownership at a rate of 43%, as opposed to 82% of married couples. Next slide. And we talk about Black home ownership. You look at census tracts, and there are 22 tracts out of 198 census tracts in Louisville where 50% of Black homeowners live. You can see that again, West Louisville, east of the airport. And then I think we need to look at the housing needs. We need to know the housing needs. Next slide. These are numbers from the 2019 Housing Needs Assessment in Louisville. And to give kind of the community context, the unmet need, and you've heard this in the press, you've heard this in community conversations, the unmet need for housing in Louisville at 30% and 50% is about 55,000 by the time you get to 50%, the need of units. As the income increases, you see the need decreases. The same is true for people who are cost burdened, people who spend more than 30% of their income on housing, both renters and homeowners. And the need has only grown since this housing needs assessment 3 years ago was conducted. We've had a 10% increase in area median income with only a 5% increase in wages, not to mention the overall impact of the global pandemic. Next slide. So I wanted to drill down on the 9 neighborhoods that are impacted by the partnership. And it's the West Core and the Northwest Core. They divided it into market areas that are the 2 areas that we need to focus on. And so we'll start with the West Core. And this is a breakdown of from the housing needs assessment on that area. The breakdown by race and ethnicity: 84% Black, 13% white. The housing type: 67% single family versus 24% multifamily. The cost burden, so people who spend more than 30% and 50% of their income. 44% of households spend more than 30% of their income on housing, as opposed to 29% of Louisville. 25% of households spend more than 50% of their income, as opposed to 13% of Louisville. The median household income is a little over $25,000, as opposed to $50,000 across Louisville. The median home value is $69,000, almost $70,000, as compared to $174,000 in Louisville. The housing tenure, so going back to homeowner versus renter, it is 61% renter versus 39% homeowner. And the median gross rent is $633, as opposed to $770 in other areas of Louisville. Next slide. So here's a map of the West Core. It includes Algonquin, California, Chickasaw, Park Duval, Park Hill, and Parkland. And I wanted to point out with this map, it maps new single-family housing and multifamily housing construction permits as of the time of this report. But it also maps the number of affordable housing units that are going to expire in 2023, so next year. So there are 55 subsidized income restricted units that will be expiring. And 863 homes with visible exterior issues, which goes to the point of not only do we need to create affordable housing opportunities, we need to maintain over the long term those affordability opportunities. And also create programs to do rehabilitation on existing housing units. Next, please. So drilling down from kind of that large view of the need for 31,000 units at 30% AMI and about 55,000 total when you go to 50% AMI. The unmet need in housing for the West Core at 30% AMI is 1,700 units, or a 39% of the need is not met. And 50%, 672 units, 17% of the need is not met. And then we'll look at the Northwest Core, which is the remaining of the neighborhoods. Next slide. And we can go through this quickly as well. They're very similar to the West Core statistics. Race and ethnicity: 71% Black, 25% white. Housing type: 63% single family, 29% multifamily. And I'll go over a couple more here. The housing tenure is 66% renter and 34% homeowner. So there is a great need for renter protections and a great opportunity for home ownership opportunity as well, with the number of single family detached units. Next slide, please. And this is a map of that as well, just to point out Portland, Russell, and Shawnee make up the Northwest core of the market share. And in this instance, 816 subsidized income restricted units in 13 different developments are expiring in 2023. That's a lot of units for people that might not be able to afford a rental unit anymore. And 794 homes have visible exterior issues. So again, to the need for programs to help individuals be able to upkeep their housing units.
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just for the benefit of everyone, what do you mean when you say units are expiring?
So when you take certain funds to develop a development, different units, they have a requirement that you maintain affordability over a certain period, 15 years and 30 years. And so once that expires, they do not have to be required to maintain a level of affordability.
So that eliminates the cap on the rent?
So that eliminates that cap on that rent. Yes, Judy. Yes, thank you for clarifying.
The option of the common market rate?
Yes, at that point. Very well, will be sold at that point as well. So next slide, please. So the unmet need here for 30% AMI is 2,200 units, or 40% of the need is not met, and 808 units, or 11% of the need at 50%. Next slide, please. I want to read a part of this. This is, again, looking at the West Core and the Northwest Core, looking at federal opportunity zones where that applies, vulnerabilities to displacement, as well as neighborhood opportunities. And so if you look at the Northwest Core at the bottom, and it really applies for both of them, but here's the description. The Northwest Core has a shortage of housing that is affordable to its residents. Cost burden is high, and the rate of ownership is low. There's a high volume of affordable assisted units in the area, but nearly 30% will lose their period of affordability within the next 5 years without any kind of intervention or investment. This fact, combined with new investment possibilities, makes the Northwest Core residents highly vulnerable for displacement. Revitalization efforts will need to ensure the Northwest Core residents can participate and benefit from the growth in their neighborhoods. So this is all available in the 2019 Housing Needs Assessment. Next slide. And so I just wanted to briefly mention that the partnership does not exist in a vacuum. There are many other efforts that are occurring across the city, especially land development code reform that is occurring. And just wanted to make a brief mention that there is overlapping work on many different initiatives. And that we have to capture, we've been capturing voices from across the community as a part of an initiative we're running called the Attainable Housing for All initiative. And I think a lot of what people are talking about really apply to this as well, to the partnership. Go ahead. So I wanted to share a couple, go 2 slides, actually. One more slide, Rita, please.
One more. Mhm.
And this is from Kristen McCrae at the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Affordable housing is the cornerstone of meeting these basic needs. By addressing the housing needs of our community now, we establish a path of stability and continuity for generations to come. Next slide. And from Rebecca Hollenbach and Center for Health Equity, housing is a critical root cause of health. Improving access to safe, affordable housing protects families and leads to better mental and physical health outcomes, making Louisville a healthier and safer neighborhood or community. Next. And probably heard enough from this guy already, but housing is the keystone to better living. If we can give someone stable housing, it opens up opportunity for better jobs, healthcare, education, and so much more. Next slide, please.
You are right. You're right.
And I'm just saying we need to explore windows of opportunities or challenges that we need to think about. And I think these are the challenges that we face and that we need to confront. That there is a need to be intentional about protecting people, protecting neighbors who are already called these 9 neighborhoods home, their home. There's a need for a commitment to the strongest protection for renters. What anti-displacement strategies do you need to create to protect current residents? Housing stability is at risk if we do not commit to this now. There is a need for programs that create pathways to home ownership, that create wealth, generational wealth, and create the 22,000 opportunities needed to bring about equity to the disparity between white and Black home ownership. There is a need for programs to control the ongoing, and I'm sure oncoming surge in rental prices and rising property values, as we've talked about, as rising rental rates and rising property tax bills will cause displacement of many residents. Who owns the land, who owns the rental property matter.
That's right.
Why? Finally, there is a need for some explicit mechanism, an enforceable mechanism that will ensure a tip dollar support housing that is affordable,
Come on.
equitable, and accessible to existing residents. If not, we are going to see signs of neighborhood cracking and diluting of power. An investment in attainable housing for all that is affordable, that is accessible, that is equitable is an investment in people, our neighbors, and has a very real impact on access to health, economic opportunity, educational opportunity, access to transportation, access to quality food, public safety, and the list goes on and on. So housing, as I always say, matters. Where you start your day, where you end your day is a priority. Housing is the keystone issue we must confront. So let's take a moment now and make a commitment up front before we get further into the partnership to housing affordability, to accessibility, to equity, and more importantly, a commitment to the people who currently reside in these 9 neighborhoods in Algonquin, in California, in Chickasaw, Park Duval, Park Hill, Parkland, Russell, Shawnee, and Portland. So this could be a window of opportunity. I'll urge you to look at housing, especially because that's what I'm here to talk about. That each of you control the representatives appointed by the legislature, but also as representatives appointed by the people of the neighborhoods. If it is done well and it is done with the interest of the protection of the residents at heart, it'll be great. If not, it is just another TIF experiment. So let's not fall into that trap. This is a sacred commitment, I believe, to the people of these 9 neighborhoods. And in the center of this discussion is people's right to housing. Housing stability matters. Your zip code matters. Community matters. So this is all rooted in really housing opportunities, housing choice, and the ability of people to choose where they want to live and where they want to build community. So I would just urge that there are real historical trends that we need to understand. We need to think about that as we develop approaches to housing. And housing is the keystone. With housing, stability brings so much stability to so many other areas. So please keep this in mind as you move forward. Think about housing. I invite you to engage the 2022 State of Metropolitan Housing Report when it comes out in June. And let's talk about the data and let's change that.
Good. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis.
Yeah.
Any board members have any questions for Mr. Curtis? Yes, sir.
This data,
Identify yourself, Mike.
since report or the data that you got this from is updated in June, or the report's updated in June?
The report will be released in June. The Metropolitan Housing Coalition produces the State of Metropolitan Housing Report every year and has done so since 2003. So we will have the latest data available as far as updating our last report, which focused a lot on the pandemic needs of housing stability, but also kind of a roadmap for fair housing forward as we do kind of a big transition into the year in administration.
Where does the data come from?
A variety of areas comes, some of on utilities comes directly from utilities, the American Community Survey data, we pull data from the Housing Authority, comes from a variety of local and national advocates for data. Thanks. You're welcome.
To add to that, as a member of the board of directors for the Metropolitan Housing Coalition, thank you, Tony, for coming. You might want to share that every single one of the state of metropolitan housing reports are available for free online if people are interested and want to see the different topics year to year. As you just mentioned, this year's report is coming out in June, and the housing needs assessment that you pulled a ton of data from 2019 is also available online on the Metro government website with every single data source of reference you can imagine. Both reports cite exactly where the data is pulling from for your. And then, do you want to tell people how they can join the Metropolitan?
That metropolitanhousing.org and make a donation, become a part of the conversation. We host community conversations on vacant properties, on fair housing. And if there's a affordable housing issue that is occurring in the community, we encourage you to come out and get involved. We host webinars as well. So support the mission and drive for fair and affordable housing for all. We'd love to have you as a member, and you can make that donation online.
And how much would it cost you to become a member?
We do not discriminate, so everything from $1 on up to as high as you want to go. We want all people to be involved. We don't want that to be a barrier like there are barriers to housing. So we invite you to be involved. www.metropolitanhousing.org.
All right.
Oh, into my email.
Any other? Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, so thanks for the presentation. So I take it from the presentation that you would advocate us doing everything we can to increase the stock of affordable housing in relevant areas. I did a little bit of research on my own, but I don't think very much into how TIFs can impact affordable housing. My name's David Kaplan. I've got a 1-year term. I roll off this summer. I'm the
nonprofit foundation rep. So, thanks for reminding. So I saw something in one of these publications, and I forget the name of the organization, but it was about TIFs, and they were affordable housing advocates. They said that there are some cases where TIF revenue has been used to subsidize rentals. Like the direct subsidy to renters as a way to counteract any increases of rents that might result. Have you heard of that before? And is that a tool that should be looked at? Or should the focus really stick on increasing the stock of affordable housing?
I think it's a yes and question, but yes, we're actually working with Change Led Solutions as a part of the collaborative, the Housing Solutions Collaborative, and they've actually produced a few memos on here. You know, I don't have time to go into all of that right now, but would love to come back and talk about that. About Washington DC, they have a supplemental, I'm just pulling it out here, a local rent supplement program. That is, some of it's tied to particular properties, some of it's tied to particular individuals for available properties. So they use those subsidies at the local level and to supplement also, already subsidized housing.
And is that coming out of the TIF of that subsidy?
This is a program that they instituted that they kind of looked at anti-displacement measures. And so as a part of this was the stabilization voucher program, and it paralleled it. So it's something done at the local level that would, by local government, that would supplement stuff that's going on today.
Okay. Yeah.
Tammy Hawkins for Parkland. I know you said that creating affordable housing was important, and in fact it is. I know you said that it expired, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when is that exact date that it expires?
So it depends on when you build it with. So if you have supplements for from the low income housing tax credit that comes from the state, there are certain requirements as far as length of time. So those are 15 years and 30 years, I do believe.
Correct.
And so that's at that point, there needs to be some effort made to reinvest in those to maintain that affordability long term. So it depends on whatever date that credit and capacity.
So if I'm correct, they have a certain amount of time, whether it's 10, 15 years, that they have to stay affordable, correct?
Yeah, there's a
Okay,
cap.
right. So once that cap is on that, then what happens?
There's no cap on rent. So
Right,
rent prices can go, can sell them and
Right,
to market
exactly.
out.
So I guess what I'm asking is that, can the tip donate to that? Is that what you're kind of, or? It goes,
I don't know the answer to that. Gina might have some insight.
So it's all case by case.
okay,
I used to manage affordable housing projects for the metro government.
so is it a possible option?
Yes, exactly. But I wanted to just bring this full circle, what you're pointing out. So you asked what happens at the end of the affordability period. It depends. A lot of housing are landlords, people, especially like New Directions and the housing partnership that have lots and lots, hundreds of units at a time. They come to Metro and ask for another loan to do renovation, which then kick in another period of affordability. A lot of times, what happens at the end, if they don't have resources to continue investing into the quality of the apartment complex, what Tony's describing is that there's more incentive for them to sell on a market rate basis, which can have a terrible impact on the people that are living there. So you're absolutely right. The decision of this board, if we were approached, I wanted to solicit projects that are about to expire with their affordability period, we could help finance and work out a potential deal to preserve the affordability of those units.
Get that in the contract.
Which,
It does not exclude.
Okay.
It's a,
so it's an option.
yes,
Okay, so, and I would say this, saying that the neighborhood chose and selected 9 people to represent their neighborhood,
Mhm.
which should definitely go back and talk to their neighborhoods, which would make perfectly good sense for them to make choices,
Yeah, absolutely.
depending on what's going on in their neighborhood. Correct? Okay, I just kind of wanted the people around here to be more knowledgeable about what can happen. It just doesn't have to be a bed bath.
To take it a step further, and David's question about a direct subsidy, we should ask the people, would they rather their landlord get a subsidy?
Right.
Or whether their family get the subsidy?
Right,
Because
right.
way we do, if
Mhm.
we decide to do.
Right, so it's very important for the community to reach out to the representatives if they haven't already, who they selected, to make sure that the need for. To make sure that the need of their community is addressed. You know, and then of course, like everything is kind of voting on. So I mean, if you chose a great advocate. You know, your voices should be heard. And I read it part.
All right, thank you. They don't even any other questions from the board?
You don't know what man I'm saying.
Representing.
I know. Okay, so is there any way we can,
Gonna get,
okay.
Yeah.
any other questions from Mr. Curtis? Any other questions from Mr. Curtis?
David, I just want to mention to the board that this presentation was sent over this morning when Tony sent me the final edit, so you all have it in your email.
Thank you.
Okay, some of you have already accessed it, so,
Feel free.
yeah, and post it online, and we'll post it on the website.
Mr. Curtis, this is a fantastic presentation. I'm pretty thrilled to be having it back. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so. Let's do something we should have done at the beginning. Let's go around the table and introduce everybody. We'll start over here to the right. Mr. Traeger.
Thank you. What do you do? I'll never see over public fire. Republic phone.
I mean, Chickasaw also.
Okay,
Desmond Smith, a representative of Algonquin.
thank you. Oh, so I'm gonna ask you to please sit away from the table.
Oh,
Okay, thank you. There's a table right back there.
Thank you.
Staff and also one of the original 12 board members representing a nonprofit foundation. I've got a one-year term.
Thank you.
Dawn Wade with the marketing. Regina Dunlap, Vice Chair representing Louisville branch of the NAACP.
David James, I'm the interim chair, and representing Metro Council. Mark Watson, University of Louisville.
Alicia Burris representing Cheyenne.
Mary Miller representing California.
Jeff O'Brien, I'm the ex chair represent Louisville Forward and Louisville Metro Government Economic Development. Mike Daigle, Portland neighborhood representative. Gabe Jones, Russell neighborhood.
All right, thank you, everybody.
And we have some on, David, we have Chris Romaine. Chris and Jennifer online. Go
Yes.
ahead, Chris.
I didn't have a question.
Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself and what neighborhood you represent,
I'm
and then
sorry.
we can come back to the question. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Chris Romaine and I represent Park Duval.
Okay, we have
Good
Jennifer
evening,
Hancock.
everyone. Hi, Jennifer Hancock representing Volunteers of America.
Okay. And we have Secretary Brown.
J. Michael Brown, I'm a member at large appointed by the governor.
Thank you.
Member at large. Okay. They took them all. They can, yeah, if they can, oh, up there, it went out earlier today too. The guy. Yeah, their equipment. Lisa, can you get Sean? They've been having problems with this. It's the Y. Thank you. I didn't even realize that.
Who's here to register?
Next, we have committee reports and board development committee. Devon Holt's not here, so Gina Dunlap, would you please give a report, please?
I was going to the partners report, just remind everybody about the most recently appointed neighborhood, board members. But I cannot share my screen, but I can read down the list. For Shawnee, that's Alicia Burns. For Portland, that's Mike Thankam. Russell, Dr. Gabe Jones. Park Duval, Chris Romaine. Chickasaw, Gary Kenneth Williams. Algonquin and Hallmark, Desmond Smith Jr. California, Mary Miller, Dr. Miller. Mary Miller. And Parkland, Tammy Hawkins. Many of these people are here today. And did I miss anyone?
The 12, so we got the 9 neighborhood representatives, but what about the 12 voting members that are the real estate holders?
Right.
The 12 of them versus the 9.
So there are 12 institutional board members. Currently, the only institutional seat that is vacant is that representing the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. As far as neighborhood representatives, we are lacking a representative from the Park Hill neighborhood. As a result, we have kept the application portal open online for anyone who lives in the Park Hill neighborhood and is interested in serving as a board member. That online application will remain open until Wednesday, May 18th. We are available if you'd like our contact information to investigate more, or if there are specific questions about the constitution of the board, I'm more than happy to address those. Report that's included.
Right, Jeremy, sorry.
About the restructure.
But that's all.
She's not supposed to.
All right. No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
I'm sorry, it's, so you said it's required to have it filled.
Yes.
So the seat is required by law, but we are not required.
That's right.
to Actually have it,
That's right.
and that is why they. This is what. 19 member. We have a max. Up to 21 seats, but we have 19 at present.
That's right.
All right, thank you. Questions? Steve Jennifer's on the line for the board development committee. None, thank you. Finance committee chair, Steve Traeger.
Hello, I'm the chair of the finance committee. We've got it attached. We sent out to everybody our balance sheet and it's showing total assets of $95,938, less liabilities of $8,700 for a total fund balance of $87,000. Our expenditures year to date are $23,583. So we're running $8,000 or so dollars a month.
Thank you. Any board members have any questions of the finance committee? None? All right, thank you.
Great question, just for the new board members, is the expenses, it's mainly staff support.
Yes, rent, staff.
Yeah, great.
Any other questions? No, all right.
One more.
I have
I'm sorry.
one question, Tammy, I don't know if this would be for him, or this would be about for you, as far as the status of the federal. Was that already discussed?
We're on the way to that. We're
Okay.
getting. All right. That's
Oh,
under.
all right.
All right. Was there any other questions for finance? No, all right. Next is fundraising update. We are up to, am I correct?
Yeah, 6.1 plus million
6.1
plus.
million as far as fundraising. We are still open for people to make donations. We just received $40,000 donation today from GLAR, Greater Louisville Real Estate Association. So if any board members have any access to any people that have any funds that you could funnel this way, we are all ears and willing and able to meet with them to discuss that. Okay. All right. All business. Employer identification number. We have received our employer identification number through the help of Ross Brown Todd. Is Chris on the thing?
No, he's not. Mm-mm.
So our new EIN number is 88-1662505. For those that want to know, our 501c3 application is still in process. We hope to have it this summer. The paperwork is being processed for all that. And Rita, I'll let you talk about the DNO insurance.
Yeah, well, it's still pending. Some of the information that we're submitting for the 501c3, we need for the DNO. So hopefully by our next meeting, both of those should be locked down.
Any questions about any of that so far from any of the board members? No? All right. New business. We have to fill out our 990 by May the 15th, deadline to file.
I just put that on because May 15th is right around the corner. So there could be some discussion about how the board wants to handle that, or if we want to move forward to file for an extension. But it was mentioned, pardon me.
What we're requiring for the extension?
We have to, at our meeting last month, Chris talked about we need to engage an accounting firm to process that. Being, you know, that's the sort of, I won't say tax return for nonprofit, but it's kind of similar to that, is what the 990 form is, a public form. And so we don't want to be remiss and just ignore the 15th. We want to figure out, do we want to just get an extension? Do we want to secure accounting firm to take a look at getting that process and submit it?
Thank you, Mike.
It's probably a question for Chris, and I don't think he's here, but I mean, it's a chicken egg problem. We don't have a 501c3, so why are we filing a 990? Is it original?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, but regardless of not having the 501c3 status, he mentioned last month, we're still legally required to do it, while the 501c3 is pending.
Correct.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's pending. Yeah, and you have,
Thoughts on that?
I just-
Don't have it. We don't have the account aspect.
well, if you don't file for an extension, then you could be up for penalties.
Right, but I'm saying, like, what's our threshold, like? Will we just internally manage filing for that, or what's the step? I guess that's fine.
Maybe I could get with Steve and have a conversation. I don't know if we could do it internally or not, in terms of filling out the 990. You have any thoughts on that?
We need professional advice. I don't.
Okay, well, then let me explore it. Let me explore that, and send out an email to the board.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, I'm Elizabeth Burns with Shiny. I actually own and operate an accounting firm in the West End. But I do not have my CPA yet. My CPA is under the picture.
He's in a
meeting,
so take the cord, it's gonna pull it in and out, because it runs sometimes.
Yes, sir.
The HDMI cord,
Which court?
the HDMI.
But to answer,